Greetings from Tokyo, my dear, dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are doing very, very well today. So I'd like to continue this series of videos now with respect to the Criterion collection and just some ideas that I thought I might share with you in the context of the Barnes & Noble Criterion collection sale that's going on right now. So now it's the beginning of July 2019, and so the sale is on in earnest. So what I've done so far is I've just spoken about a small selection of titles in the Criterion collection that I thought might be of potential interest to at least some of you out there if you are looking for titles to buy or at least consider buying. So I want to thank you very much for your lovely, enthusiastic responses and your comments, and also letting me know about the titles that you have purchased so far. It's really great, and it's so nice because the sale has only just begun. So just think of it, you have an entire month and a little bit from now to enjoy. So for those of you who are able to enjoy it, please do so. Now, I've been talking about just a number of titles that I think might be of potential interest to at least some of you out there. So let me just continue with that trend now going forward. Now, I want to speak about a particular set in the Criterion collection, and in particular the Eclipse series sets. Now, I might have spoken about this before, but I do want to bring it to your attention just in case some of you might not be aware immediately. But it's these. The Eclipse series set is Eclipse series 19, and this is a DVD set, and it's comprised of 3 discs. 3 discs with a number of titles on them. There are, let's see, 5 films in total here on 3 discs. And this set is called Chantal Akerman in the 70s. So Chantal Akerman in the 70s. This is a series of films by the great legendary filmmaker Chantal Akerman. Now, there is another film in the Criterion collection that she has. I'll get to that in a minute. But if we're going to, if I'm going to speak about an Eclipse series set, I could speak about many of them because many are really quite fascinating and unbelievably high quality. But this one is probably one of my favorites because the films that are included here are really coming from a filmmaker that is making films in the 70s during a time where she is experiencing a lot of sort of exploration and journey and self-exploration. And you can see the incredible intelligence and remarkable skill that she already possesses at a very, very young age. And they're on display in the early parts of her filmography in the 70s, which are included on this set. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk to you just very briefly about these very interesting films, and we can go from there. Incidentally, or maybe not so incidentally, but rather it has quite a bit of relevance actually. She is also the director of this film, which is spine number 484, and this is the Blu-ray. And this is called Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So this is a landmark film. This film is one of the landmark films of modern cinema, so 1975, so late 20th century cinema. This is one of the greatest films of the late 20th century cinema, one of the greatest films ever made. And if we're going to think of her career with this as the watershed moment, then it's possible to look at the films that are included in the Eclipse series set as being, let's say, before Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, and after Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So films that came before and films that came after. But actually, I think it's probably more worthwhile, at least from my point of view, to think of the entirety of her filmography, at least as it exists in the 1970s. And so that's why I think that I would recommend this entire, not only this Blu-ray, not only getting the Eclipse series set, but maybe getting them both, because you are getting a truly masterful series of films by a masterful filmmaker at a time in her life and her career that she is just firing on all thrusters creatively as an artist. And her art and her work are so how should I put it? They're so personal, incredibly intimate to her own life and her own biography, which I think makes them very striking. And at the same time, they have this broad universality kind of appeal to them when we're talking about relationships between parents and children, or relationships between lovers or potential lovers, or relationships between how should I put it, mothers and daughters, mothers and sons, and the like. And so, and also relationships between oneself and one's environment, and how the environment can be both a kind of a place where one loses oneself in terms of one's personality and character, but at the same time it creates a kind of contextualization, if you will, that is placed on terms that are at once grand and also at the same time quite intimate and personal. And so she is dealing with a lot of themes and concerns that touch upon the visual aspect of filmmaking, the environment, scenes, landscapes. But again, she contextualizes them in a way that makes them so personal and so intimate, and therefore very approachable, and at the same time almost impenetrable in terms of a unique viewing experience. So this is Chantal Akerman, in my view, in a nutshell. But she is so fascinating and so complicated and so wonderful and rich as an artist. So I have no issue, no problem at all recommending both of these for those of you who might be interested during the Barnes & Noble sale. So just very quickly, if we take a look at the films here, which I have just taken the liberty of taking out of the box just beforehand. So if you wanted to go, let's say, in a kind of chronology in terms of her filmography, then I would suggest starting with this first disc here, which is called the New York Films. And these are films that Akerman made when she was in New York. So the first one that you should start... Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. I should take that back. If you actually want to start at the very beginning of her sort of filmography, instead of starting here, you should actually start here. You start with this Blu-ray disc. And the reason why is because one of the supplements, it's included on the Blu-ray disc of Jean Dielman, 23 Kilo Commerce, 1080 Poucelles, is her film Saute ma vie. So you should start with her first film, Saute ma vie, which is a film that is a supplemental feature that is included on the Blu-ray disc or the DVD as well of her film Jean Dielman, 23 Kilo Commerce, 1080 Poucelles. So start with the film Saute ma vie, which is on this disc, which is a very interesting. It's a very interesting work, and it's kind of peculiar in its approach and in its themes of the person and her environment in a very almost I wouldn't call it satirical or it's not necessarily funny, but it's a little bit surreal, but a very interesting work. And then from there, you can go then to the first disc in the Chantal Akerman in the 70s Eclipse series set, which is called by the Criterion Collection the New York films. So you should then go to the film La Chambre from 1972, which is a short film. Again, it's maybe a little bit of an experimental film perhaps, but one that is very fascinating. And again, if we're talking about the person and the environment, this film I think embodies that theme quite vividly. And then from there we can go to the film Hotel Monterey, which is also on the same DVD disc. Again, another lovely almost landscape work focusing in on a particular piece of architecture or building, and the people or the environmental details that make up this environment. And again, we're dealing with just the way in which the environment forms character, or maybe it's vice versa, I'm not sure, but again, really fascinating here, Hotel Monterey. And then let's go to the film here, which is the second disc in the Chantal Akerman in the 70s set, which is this film called Je tu il elle. So that's translated into English as I, you, he, she. So Je tu il elle. So this is a film that is also starring Chantal Akerman, and this is a feature-length film that is again another keen and intimate portrayal of the experiences of a young woman, and it deals with her sort of journey, and the journey involves sexual journey as well. So it is a film that might not necessarily be for everyone, but it is fascinating. It's fascinating in terms of what I think her works are about, in at least one aspect anyway. It's the portrayal of the intimate and the personal in the context of the grand environment. And here we are dealing with quite a personal work, I think. So Je tu il elle, a fascinating work from Akerman. So that's where I think you should go next if you want to go in chronological order. Then you can go to the Blu-ray or the DVD equivalent of Jean Dillman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. And this work is one that I've spoken about once before, but good things are always worth repeating. This film is, as I say, a towering masterwork. It is truly electrifying in its static nature. I don't know if that makes sense, but I love that kind of polar opposite duality, or maybe it's more than two. Perhaps there may be multiple tones and feelings that are at play here simultaneously. There is so much going on here, so much bubbling under the surface. The surface might seem cool and austere, but believe me, my friends, it is hot and vibrant, and it is filled with much thought and pondering and indecisiveness and confusion and all this stuff that makes up the wonder and the disappointment that is human nature. So this film is just a masterwork. Jean Dillman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So yes, so that's where you should go next, from 1975. This is incidentally again spine number 484. And then from there we can go back to the first disc of the Chantal Akerman in the 70s Eclipse series, and then we can go to the third film on this first disc, which is called News from Home. This is from 1976, and this is a very personal, intimate, powerful, and a very, how should I put it, in many ways I think it's quite a brave film in the sense of how truly detailed and intimate the work is with respect to Chantal Akerman and her life and her relationship with her mother. So this film, News from Home, is fascinating, and it portrays an era of New York that is no longer in existence because it's from the 1970s, and the 1970s New York is probably a lot different from the New York that we know today. So it acts almost like a time capsule, if you will, but also it serves the initial thesis that I'm trying to pose about Chantal Akerman and her approach, namely the intimate that is contextualizing the broader environment. Here we have her own relationship with her mother contextualizing the concept of New York at a certain point in time. Here, so News from Home, fascinating work. And then from there you can go to the third and final disc in the Chantal Akerman in the 70s Eclipse series set, which is this film from 1978, Les Rendezvous d'Anna, which is a work that is yet again another kind of maybe a travel journey type of story involving the main character and her relationships, whether they be past relationships or newly founded ones, or for whatever reason. So this kind of journey film, but it's not just a journey that is through physical space, but it's also an emotional journey that is set, contextualized in various relationships that are depicted. So again, it does serve this thesis of the personal and the intimate, contextualizing the broader environment. So Les Rendezvous d'Anna is a work that I think is bold and I would say in many ways quite tender and fierce, and it serves as another wonderful reminder just how strong and confident and breathtaking the scope of the artistry Chantal Akerman really possessed. An amazing work. This is an amazing one of the great works that's included in any Eclipse set, in my opinion. So, Les Rendezvous d'Anna. So, there you have it. There you have a brief overview of the Chantal Akerman works in the 1970s that are included in the Criterion collection. And of course, her filmography extends beyond the 1970s. And so perhaps one day, who knows, if it were indeed possible, it would be nice to see more of her later works included in the Criterion collection in some form or another. But for the time being, of course, I think it is a very rich source of great works if we were to rely on these selections from the current Criterion collection. In other words, if we were only to be able to rely on these, I think they would more than suffice. Indeed, they would provide a broad range of great artistic works that are majestic in scope and yet so minute and detailed in their intimacy. So, my friends, for your consideration, won't you please consider Chantal Akerman in the 70s, the Eclipse series DVD set number 19, and spine number 484 in the Criterion collection. This is Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So, my dear friends, my dear friends, I hope this is something that you might consider, because once again, Chantal Akerman is a very important voice. She is a voice, and she's a filmmaker who unfortunately left us much too soon and much too young. But she did create a body of work that is stellar, absolutely stellar. And her 70s work, and perhaps actually going a little bit before that, if we think about Saute ma vie, which is included in the Blu-ray set, or the release of Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So if we think of Saute ma vie from the late 1960s, we get a grandeur and scope from a filmmaker who is seemingly so possessed with so much fierce will and artistic drive and sharp intelligence. It's a meteoric, fiery, and truly bold set of films. My goodness. Chantal Akerman, the 70s, and Jean Dioman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, for your consideration. Okay, my friends, that's it for now, and so I hope you're doing very well, my friends, and please keep on sharing with us the acquisitions that you have made during the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale. I, for one, would love to hear what it is you have decided to get. And hopefully for some of you out there, that might mean getting some films by Chantal Akerman. If that is the case, of course, please let me know. It would make me so happy. Okay, my friends, until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. Please, please, please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, cheers.